welcome back. So soon and very soon, it's probably not the version that you've heard in the past, but that is from Michael Bloodgood. And Michael Bloodgood actually has his own band called Bloodgood, and they are a Christian rock group out of Bellevue, and they've traveled the world. And he actually did a solo album, and if you can get a chance to pick up that CD, you're not going to regret it. It's a bunch of hymns, and he did really good on it. So I really enjoyed that, and I honestly could not find a song that I liked that had anything to do with Elijah. And so, anyways, I just decided to pick that one, and we're gonna go back to using Linda Lanier's music here pretty quick too. So anyways, okay, we're going to continue on. If you can grab your book, The 100. I know some of you've got it. Some of you have that book now. And so if you go to page, should be 17 in your book, that's where we're going to kick off. And the name Elijah comes from the Hebrew name, which is right up here. Elijah, contracted from or form of Luja, meaning my God is salvation. Okay, and so we're not really that familiar or know exactly when Elijah was born, but we do know that he lived during the last half of the 9th century BC, because he lived during the time of the kings. All right, and so these are the kings he lived kind of through that time. Is Joram, king of Judah, from 851 to 843 BC, and then he lived then Jeha from 843 BC to 814 BC. And then Jehoahaz from 814 to 798 BC. And then you have Joash, king of Judah, from 835 to 796 BC. I don't really understand where how he was also king during that time. Probably he was a king of a province of Judah or something, but these kings are kind of overlapping here. So, we do know that Elijah was a prophet, and if you go to 1 Kings 19:16, you're gonna see that. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and read that. And today I pulled out my King James version and put it in that. And so and Jeha, the son of Nimshi, shall thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elijah, the son of Shaphat of Abel-Maholah, that's a whole mouthful there, shall thou anoint to be prophet in thy room. Okay? So we know that he was a prophet because he was anointed, all right? And, he's really considered a biblical hero because he had some good relations with kings that his mentor Elijah didn't have. And so we're going to look more into that in a little bit here. But we do know that Elijah had come from a rich farmer. He was a son of a rich farmer in Galilee. And he was approached by Elijah when Elijah was walking along, and he saw Elijah tilling the family farm, and he called to him and told him to come with him. And he approached him, and we can find that in 1 Kings 19:19. Let's read that. So he departed thence and found Elijah the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he with the 12th, and Elijah passed by him and cast his mantle upon him. Okay, so let's talk about the 12 yoke of oxen. Basically, one yoke is 2. So he had 24 oxen working the ground. All right, this is kind of unheard of. This is kind of like, you didn't see this very often where they were using 24 oxen to till the ground up. Okay, this just showed how much money that they had and how rich they were, because one oxen was worth 30 shillings of silver. And so when you break this down, 30 shillings per ox times 24, that's 720 shillings. And 30 shillings was basically 5 weeks of wages. Okay, so in just oxen tilling that ground, they basically had more than 2 years worth of wages in their oxen just right then and there. Okay, and so you can read about that in Exodus 21:32. Let's go ahead and turn there. I'll read it real quick. And if you're not familiar, Exodus is in the Old Testament. A little joke there. Okay, it's right after Genesis. And if you don't know where Genesis is, just go to the front of the book and you'll find it. Okay, all right. So I'm going to read it in my New King James. All right. So 32, chapter 21, verse 32, and it says, "If the ox gores a male or female servant," which means take him out, okay, "he shall give to their master 30 shillings of silver, and the ox shall be stoned." Okay, so basically 30 shillings of silver would pay for one ox during that time. Okay, all right, so we know that, like I said, there was about 5 weeks per 30 shillings. That means they had over 2 years worth of money in that stock. So you know that they had money. There's no doubt about that. Like I said before, Elijah, he tried to make friends with kings and try to work things out. He was very involved in politics by helping kings' forces attack Moab and defend Israel against Syria attacks. Okay, and so this is found in 2 Kings 3, chapter 3, verses 21 through 27. So basically, it's a whole chapter, and you can read the whole chapter, but there's one part I wanted to read because this is where the Lord comes to him. Okay, comes on him. Okay, so it reads like this: "And Elijah said, As the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, surely were it not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, okay, I would not look at you, nor see you." Verse 15, "But now bring me a musician." Then it happened, when the musician played, that the hand of the Lord came upon him. Okay, so why do you think that he wanted a musician? And most likely, a musician back then was a harp player or a flute player. Okay, but why do you think that he wanted a musician to come? Well, for the fact is, he was extremely upset, and all the commentaries I've read, I researched this, they all say that he needed to calm down, and a musician would do that. Once he calmed down, the Lord was able to work through him, okay? This happens to us, too. I've been so mad that I couldn't hardly see straight, and I can just picture the Lord stepping back and saying, when you calm down, mister, then we can work together. And so when I have been able to, and that, my bosses have done that, they just wait until I get all calmed down, and then we can talk, So I really, early on in life, I'd really just kind of learned, once in a while it happened, but I'd learned that if I just keep calm, like Proverbs 15:1, this just came to mind, that a soft answer turns away wrath. So when things are starting to get kind of heated up, then if I can calm it down and use soft words and just, try to compliment, then usually it diffuses the situation pretty fast. And so But that's what he had to do. He had to get some music in there flowing and try to I don't know if he did that, meditated, but he could have meditated on the Lord. It doesn't say, so there's no biblical evidence of that, but it does say that he brought musician in, okay? So let me just make that clear, okay? All right, so he was well liked among the leaders, but even though he had been discipled by Elijah, he didn't learn some of the bad traits that Elijah had, because Elijah, he didn't have any problem torquing people off, okay? But Elijah, saw that and he learned from it. I worked for a guy one time that he was pretty arrogant, and people tolerated him, but some didn't like him that much. And but he had a lot of good traits about him, so I learned those and what to do and what not to do. And you can learn from others of what they do. Maybe you don't want to do it that way because it's not good for you. And some it works, but just being a butthead, if I can say that, is not any time a good time. Okay, it's never a good thing. All right. So let's talk about his miracle work, the things he did, in the name of the Lord. In 2 Kings 4:1-7, the widow had come to him and said that she had a bunch of debt, and that she just didn't know what to do. And Elijah said, go borrow some vessels, which would have been like something to hold oil in, and go borrow a bunch of empty vessels and bring them back and start filling them up with oil. And she goes, well, all this I have is just this. He goes, just trust me, go do it. And I'm paraphrasing here, okay? So she goes and borrows a bunch of vessels, empties them out of whatever was in it. She starts pouring oil in them. And she kept going and kept going and kept going, and it just wouldn't stop until there was no more vessels left, and then the Lord allowed it to stop. And Elijah says, okay, now go sell all those and pay your debts. And whatever you have left over, you get to keep for yourself. You get to live on. That's amazing, okay? That is pretty cool. In the next story, from 8-37, he meets this Shemanite woman, and to kind of paraphrase, she really likes him. She's wealthy, and she tells her husband to build an upper room for him. And so that anytime he passes by that way, that he can stay there. Well, he wants to bless her, and they get to talking, and he finds out that she's childless, doesn't have a child. So he tells her, in a year from now you'll have a child. And she said, don't lie to me. I'm too old for that. And sure enough, he blessed her with a child. Okay, pretty cool. Another story, and from 38-44 in the same chapter, there's this deadly stew that is in the situation, and he purifies that, and he cleanses it, and then in fact, he tells the lady, let's feed these people, and goes, I don't have enough for that. We don't, and there's 100 people, and they feed 100 people, and that reminds me of Jesus feeding the 5,000 and the 4,000. Just God's always continually to supply for His people. It also reminds me of the lady, that the widow and her son only had enough for them to eat and then die. And they fed Elijah, and then they had enough until the drought was over. God's always providing like that. And then one of the last stories I want to leave with Elijah is, even when Elijah was dead, he's still healing, he's still raising people from the dead. This is amazing, okay? 2 Kings, we're going to jump clear to 13, 20, and 21. And it says, then Elijah died, and they buried him. And the raiding bands from Moab invaded the land in the spring of the year. So it was, as they were burying a man, that suddenly they spied a band of raiders, and they put the man in the tomb of Elijah. And when the man was laid down and touched the bones of Elijah, he revived and stood on his feet. Pretty amazing. That's just like, Even when the guy's dead, he's still raising people from the dead. He's still doing some miraculous things, through the Lord. And so I've just really been excited about studying. Now, I went a lot further than what I did in my book, but it's because the book was designed for you to dig deeper, just like I did here in this video. And I encourage you to continue to learn more about this guy, because there's more. Okay, so until next time. Now, next time we're going to be studying Enoch, and I want you to be prepared because there's a little special surprise in that one. Okay, so you have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. No more crying.